Hey, folks, my guest today is Raphael Danilo. He's a French entrepreneur and investor based in Brooklyn, New York. By day, he's the co-founder and CEO of Yobs, an interview intelligence platform on top of Zoom. Yobs is backed by industry leaders like Adam Grant and trusted by dozens of high-growth companies like Nestle, HomeTap, and Nissan. On nights and weekends, he runs Evening Fund, a 3 million operator fund out of which he writes 50 to 100K checks into early stage companies. Raphael, you ready to take us to the top?
Let's do it.
All right, what came first, by the way, the Evening Fund or Yobs?
So Yobs came first. Evening Fund is something that I started just earlier this year. And we've done about 25 investments so far in 2021. Yeah, as you said, something that I do just on nights and weekends to, kind of give back and support other founders.
Very cool. Well, give back and support, but you need to make a return if you plan on. I mean, who did you raise capital from?
So some of the capital. So I do it with a partner. Her name is Kat. She's also a full-time founder of a VC-backed company called Barreto. So some of the capital is ours. Some of the capital is from friends of mine, industry connections, and then we have a couple of larger funds. I can't name all of them, but Bain Capital is one that I can name, and then there's a couple of other kind of like multi-stage funds that are LPs in the fund. And yeah, absolutely. And honestly, we very often fit into kind of angel allocations because we only write 50, 100K checks. So they're pretty small checks. We're not trying to lead rounds or anything. And it's super fun. And we actually got our first unicorn a month ago after less than a year of investing. So far it seems like it's going pretty well. And, most importantly, we're having a ton of fun.
All right, tell me more about Yobs. Who's buying this technology, and what are they? How are they using you?
Yeah, so with Yobs, the kind of the premise behind it is that interviews have the highest impact on the quality of hires, but interestingly, they're also the process with the highest error rate. And so it's even within the hiring process. So about like 50% of interviews basically have a conclusion that doesn't end up being true post hire. Like we thought that this person was, very extroverted. Turns out they weren't, et cetera, et cetera. And they also have the biggest impact on the time to hire, like how long it takes to hire someone. 60 to 80% of it comes back to the interviews. And in the past, like this wasn't too big of a deal because you could do multiple interviews on sites over like weeks and you could still get good candidates. But now you have so much competition for talent, especially because of remote work and the talent shortages and just everything that's happening at the macro level, that if you're not going fast, and I'm talking like 3 interviews max for a whole process for, per candidate, and you still have to be precise and you still have to be engaging. If you're not if this is not your bar, you're not going to get great talent. And so this is particularly painful. Well, so this is a problem that everybody's facing, from the smallest startup to the biggest companies. As you mentioned, like we work with Nissan all the way down to like small startups. But the companies that kind of have, feel the pain the most are what we call high growth companies. And so high growth companies are typically venture backed. They don't have to be, but oftentimes they can be.
So Rafael, kind of just jumping in for a second. So yeah. Understand the platform. I think my audience will clearly understand what you're doing based on that description you just gave. Help me understand how you're pricing. Is it per interview per month?
So we actually have a free forever plan, and we just came out of beta. So right now we're not even charging for our entry level plan. We're only charging
your pre-revenue today.
We only charge enterprises. So we have some larger customers that we charge, but these high growth companies, we don't charge them today. We'll start charging in Q1 or Q2.
Okay, can you tell me more about the enterprise folks today? How do you model their plans?
Yeah, so it's basically based on the number of recruiter seats that you need to have on the platform. So, we will serve recruiting teams largely, but then you also have interviewers that are, functional heads, head of sales, head of engineering, so on and so forth. And so depending on the number of people that you need, collaborating on the platform, that's what we charge you based on. But, unlimited number of interviews, HS integration, all of that stuff. And then in the free plan, you can basically integrate Greenhouse, Zoom, Google Calendar, and if that's your stack, then we give the tool away for free today.
I see. So these enterprises, why not give it to them for free as well? Or are we just talking like these are like 2 or 3 of your buddies that run enterprise things, so it made sense to charge them?
Yeah, no, because the enterprise guys typically have different requirements when it comes to security, data privacy. There's things around like custom integrations or like small customizations, and then also just like the whole service component of like they may want support around just making sure their process is being run properly. So they have the budgets, but they need a little bit more hand holding. That's just
I
the
see.
nature of enterprise sales.
So I want to go back to your free choices, the freemium plan choices you made in a second and your backstory. But before that, so give me sort of an average, right? Was an enterprise account going to pay you per month to use the technology?
Yeah, so our enterprise accounts are in the five-figure annual contract value. So I mean, it depends, but it's kind of like 10K per year onwards. So roughly $1,000 a month,
Yep.
up to like $5,000 a month.
How many recruiters does someone paying you $1,000 a month likely have?
Um, Probably about a dozen, I would say,
Okay.
like 10 plus. When we work with high growth companies, they typically have like up to 10. So enterprise typically kicks in when you start to have like, 10, 15 plus people on your recruiting team.
Yep, that makes sense. Give me the backstory here. When did you guys launch the business?
Yeah. So we launched 3 years ago, and it's funny because I'm from France originally, as you mentioned, and my
Just to be clear,
background
that's
is.
2019, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 2018 actually is when we incorporated the business.
Okay.
And like, so before COVID, like I was always working remotely for startups. Like I worked for an Israeli startup remotely while I was in LA. Like we worked with some European companies with my co-founder, and we're both European transplants in the US. So we've always done the remote hiring thing. And so we've always kind of felt the pain of interviewing over Zoom and not being able to collaborate efficiently and effectively when you're interviewing people remotely. Like you have to consolidate your notes, you have to make sure you're capturing the key moments, and it's pretty hard. And so we came up with this idea of like, well, what if you could like actually like record conversations, transcribe them, make it really easy to like grab the key moments, share them, and then as your recruiting team starts to do this more and more and more, kind of like what Gong.io does for sales calls, you can actually start coaching recruiters the same way that with Gong, you can start coaching your sales reps based on like what closes more deals. Where here's the same thing, like what closes more candidates, what engages them the most.
Are you licensing
We
someone
learn from
else's like call flagging or call tagging technology, or have you guys built that in house?
So the transcription technology, we work with a couple of different vendors because that's pretty sort of table stakes. And then the whole technology to sort of like look into what's happening in the transcript and the call, that's ours. That's proprietary.
I see. I see. How many folks are on the team today?
We have 12 people on the
12.
team.
Okay.
Kind of
How many of them are
the
just intense engineers?
About half of them.
Okay. Six.
And
Okay,
we have
got
a
it.
couple of PhDs in organizational psychology who are kind of like domain experts in interviewing and assessments. So they're deeply technical, in their own way, just not, software engineers per se.
So you get going in 2018, you're experimenting. What was it like? Do you remember closing your first customer, and who was it? How'd you get them?
Yeah, it was crazy because actually Nissan and another huge Fortune 500 company were our first customers. So Nissan, I think, was like number two or number three.
How'd
So
you get Nissan?
it was, so I actually knew someone who worked at Nissan at the time who's not there anymore. And we went to a conference, and one of their colleagues heard about us, and they just like very organically, like that person reached out, and we ended up making a pilot happen. But what was interesting is like we totally kind of skipped the whole, work with startups and then work your way up to enterprise. We did it, exactly the other way, where we started with Fortune 500 accounts, which had its pros, namely that you can get really big contracts really quickly. I think like as an advice, I guess, to other founders on this front, like, just get ready to get bogged down, and also it's like a lot of customization and some stuff that like when you're on your road to product market fit, you probably don't want to waste your time doing. So I think that's one like flag I would raise when you're going after like big enterprises as first customers.
So Nissan was number one or number two. And then obviously you're now 2 years later scaling up. How many enterprise customers are you serving today?
20 plus. And then on the free plan, we have dozens of companies using us.
Yeah. But all those 20 ones, again, those are the enterprise folks you alluded to earlier, where you are charging them per recruiter per seat.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take that ARPU you told me earlier of $1,000 a month multiplied by 20? You guys are getting about $20,000 a month right now in revenue.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Okay. And just to calculate growth rate, where were you exactly a year ago? Do you remember?
Yeah, so we roughly 3x since last year. And then the free plan is something that we launched 2 months ago, exactly 3 months ago. So the strategy for us has been really about like really playing the long game. So I think like we probably could have 5x this year or more if we fully focus just on revenue. But I think like we're in a space where it's basically a land grab. Like there's a couple of other companies that raised a bunch of funding to do something similar as what we're doing, but
Who
they're
are those
only
companies?
going
Just name one or two of them.
there's a company called Clovers out of LA that just raised a good amount of funding from like, pretty solid investors, and a couple of others. And, they've raised like, 10 to 30 million, roughly is the range. So still pretty early. But, kind of like the stage after. And I think like the strategy that a lot of the folks in the space are taking is focus entirely on the enterprise accounts. And I think like, it makes sense. I understand why they do it. But I think there's such a huge long tail of businesses that don't want to shell out 10 to 20K today, but may want to in a year or two, and capturing them today because they already feel the pain in something like a free plan and, tapping into more of like a product led growth, go to market. I think in the long run, it could be the winning strategy. And so while everybody's focused on like enterprise sales and, paying tens of thousands of dollars to advertise at conferences, we're taking more of a, hey, let's be the easiest company to do business with. So you go on our website today, like you can sign up for free, book an onboarding call or explore yourself. Like we're trying to be super, super easy to work with. And that's basically the strategy.
And have you got wrapping away about 2 or 3 minutes left here? So we'll do this and then jump into the famous five. But in terms of funding, have you stayed bootstrapped or did you decide to sell some equity and raise as well?
Yeah, so we bootstrapped for a while, and then we just raised our seed round earlier this year. So we ended up raising 2.5 million, mostly from, angel investor operators who obviously, as I mentioned, like I'm a big believer in the whole operator investor model. I think it's, oftentimes like the most value added investors.
So was there a lead in that 2.5 or was it like a 20, $100,000 checks?
It wasn't $100,000 checks, but we didn't have like a strong lead. We raised on safe notes. So it was basically just like, we set the terms and then we brought in who we wanted to bring in. And then had a couple of cool kind of like superstar angels like Adam Grant come in, who've been awesome to work with.
And then when you're obviously thinking about funding, minimizing dilution is obviously important. So you're doing a note, so cap's important. Most people in a seed round are doing effectively 10 to 20% if they convert it at the cap. Were you sort of in that same standard range?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty big safe. I mean, if that means it was like a $20 million cap or 18 to $20 million cap, something like that, that's pretty large.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, especially in 2021, like especially if you have traction, and you've proven that you're hitting on some of the themes that will be no brainers over the next few years. You have a good team and you've shown traction. I think like investors understand that some of these markets are going to be land grabs, and so you got to move quick. And so in the long run, every investor, and we think about it the same as investors, like we're looking for these like 1 billion or $10 billion companies when we're doing venture investments, because 80% of companies are going to die at that startup stage. So whether you pay 10 or 18 million on a cap is not really like, that's not what's going to make or break it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, more about optionality though, right? I mean, you basically put yourself on a track where you have to do something faster, either hit growth faster or you end up dying faster, right? So
Yeah.
why is it important to have that like short-term focus versus, buy yourself time, be default alive, be cash flow positive and play the long game?
I think like, as I mentioned, like playing the long game in the sense of, for example, raising venture funding is what allowed us to play that long game in terms of like having a free plan, which I think in the long run is what's going to allow us to win. Because while everybody's going to be focused on charging $10,000 for a product that probably isn't worth it, we're able to play that longer game, acquire users, give them a free version of the product, like get them hooked. And then over time, start layering on more and more of those features, more and more integrations that actually make the tool really worth it. So I think like the like raising venture dollars allows you to tap into strategies that like long run can actually work out better. So just as you said, it's more about optionality. And I think you can also do it the bootstrapped kind of like look for profitability way, and we see a lot of great businesses do that too.
All right, Raphael, let's wrap up here with the famous five. One word answers if you can. Number one, favorite book.
0 to 1. I would say 0 to 1.
Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
I think Jason Lemkin, not a CEO anymore, but great guy to follow.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building jobs?
Full Story is awesome.
Number 4, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
I'm anal about that. I would say 7 or 8 hours.
Nice. And situation, married, single, kids?
My current situation?
Yep.
Girlfriend, not married yet.
No kids running around?
Just a dog.
All right. And how old are you?
I'm 23.
23. Last question. Something you wish you knew when you were 20?
Sleep more.
Guys, there you have it. yobstech.com, helping you do interviews more effectively, faster, and make sure when you end them, there's good follow-up, strong follow-up with a tech stack that they integrate directly with. Doing $7,000 a month about a year ago, now $20,000 a month, so 3x year-over-year growth. Scaling, they just closed earlier this year, closed a $2.5 million seed round and called an $18 to $20 million valuation as they look to continue to scale. Raphael, thank you for taking us to the top.
Appreciate it, man.
One more thing before you go. We have a brand new show every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. It's called Shark Tank for SaaS. We call it Deal or Bust. One founder comes on, 3 hungry buyers. They try and do a deal live, and the founder shares back-end dashboards, their expenses, their revenue, ARPU, CAC, LTV, you name it, they share it. And the buyers try and make a deal live. It is fun to watch every Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. Additionally, remember, these recorded founder interviews go live. We release them here on YouTube every day at 2 p.m. Central. To make sure you don't miss any of that, make sure you click the subscribe button below here on YouTube, the big red button, and then click the little bell notification to make sure you get notifications when we do go live. I wouldn't want you to miss breaking news in the SaaS world, whether it's an acquisition, a big fundraise, a big sale, a big profitability statement, or something else. I don't want you to miss it. Additionally, if you want to take this conversation deeper and further, we have by far the largest private Slack community for B2B SaaS founders. You want to get in there. We've probably talked about your tool if you're running a company or your firm if you're investing. You can go in there and quickly search and see what people are saying. Sign up for that at nathanlatka.com/Slack. In the meantime, I'm hanging out with you here on YouTube. I'll be in the comments for the next 30 minutes. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this episode. And if you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up. We get a lot of haters that are mad at how aggressive I am on these shows, but I do it so that we can all learn. We have to counter those people. We got to push them away. Click the thumbs up below to counter them and know that I appreciate your guys' support. All right, I'll be in the comments. See ya.